Hi, as I said during this weekend, I will get back here with my visitors on the social media in order to make another video. I have ordered that in Italian yesterday, so I will get back here to a topic that is related to the Governance Matter series, like I said. Basically, the high topic is resisting the Russian influence and policies recommendation within this context of action. We're speaking about the issues that happened in the last year. We have advanced thoroughly within this context of action, and my main topic will be here in regards of how to get better in the future by a simultaneous effort of the United Nations and the other members of the NATO and the European Union that must collectively recognize that Russian influence is not just a domestic governance challenge, but a national security threat, and efforts to counter it must thus be treated as such. So it has been left unchecked over time, this influence, and it will compromise the integrity of Central and Eastern European democracies and will dramatically impact US foreign policy goals by eroding NATO and the European Union, ultimately undermining Western democratic model. Given that NATO and the EU member may already be compromised, the United States and Europe must be prepared to dedicate a considerable amount of policy attention and financial resources in combating this influence and developing greater resiliency within this context. While Europe has had the most prolonged exposure to Russian influence and weaker and less well-developed institutions in Central and Eastern Europe have left it susceptible to Russian influence, the United States is not immune. Enhancing transparency and the effectiveness of the Western democratic tools, instruments, and institutions is critical to resilience against the Russian influence. Loopholes in the quality of governance in Central and Eastern European countries, which Russia has used to cultivate and expand its influence in Europe with, must be closed and continuously monitored in the future. And in the end, curbing Russian influence in the long run is more about strengthening the good governance and democratic institutions. It is clear, though, that countries that have been subject to both political and economic capture may be unable to effectively counterbalance malign Russia influence without the active support and pressure from their allies and partners in NATO and the European Union. The ultimate responsibility for implementing these changes, however, lies with national governments and, importantly, the public to which they ultimately held accountable. Very important to underline some policy points to follow up. So the first thing I want to speak about is to elevate and design a specific high-level task force within the Treasury Department's Office of Financial Crimes Enforcement Networks that focuses solely on tracing and prosecuting illicit Russian-linked financial flows if they interact with the US financial system. The United States should dedicate a specific unit to tracing and mapping illicit Russian financial activity. Presently, FinCEN, F-I-N-C-E-N, is primarily focused on anti-Daesh and terrorism financing investigation, but the body is also charged with the task of safeguarding the US financial system from money laundering and national security threats, including kleptocrats and drug regimes. A unit dedicated in this context of action exclusively to the understanding and identification of Russian financial activity would be an important contribution to breaking the unvirtuous circle of Russian influence. This unit should place liaison officer in key US embassies in Europe and closely cooperate with European financial and intelligence officials to uncover and prosecute these networks. The information collected by this unit, when applicable, should be made publicly available through a database that could help expose beneficial ownership of companies and opaque business transactions of systemic importance. Second point will be about encouraging NATO and the European Union members to task their own financial intelligence units with developing dedicated units that track illicit Russian transactions. In light of the recent string of tragic terror attacks in Europe, the European Commission has proposed amendments to the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Terrorist Financing Directive to strengthen the European Union's internal financial intelligence capacity collection and transparency. Although not yet enshrined by the European Union law, the amendments take significant steps to enhance requirements on the beneficial ownership disclosure and provide FIUs with more authority. The Commission also suggests the creation of automated centralized mechanisms such as an interconnected central registry of bank and payment accounts to facilitate cross-border access information and faster detection of suspicious transactions. And while speaking about this framework, I would recommend a very good document that I have read from the European Commission. It's about anti-money laundering and countering terrorist financing, stronger rules to respond to new threats. It has been published in July 2016. So to get back always to the second point of encouraging NATO and the European Union to task their own financial intelligence unit, I would add that the measures should be swiftly adopted and implemented by the European Council and Parliament, and expanded to include provisions that enable European Union authorities to trace and analyze questionable financial activities originating and ending in Russia. Towards this end, European Union and NATO member and aspirant states should be encouraged to develop capacity within their own national FIUs. The final points will be prioritizing and enhance EU-US financial intelligence cooperation. So an European Union-United States summit should be held always on the margins of the NATO annual summit. Looking forward with this strategy from 2017, 2018 and beyond from a governance context of action, the top agenda items must be preventing undeclared cross-border money flow is invested in strategic areas of economic sectors of the economy. It can be prioritized by enhancing law enforcement and tax inspection bodies to detect the layering and regulated transfer pricing mechanism and contraband energy flows that destabilize financial systems and strengthen corrupt networks. One initiative should be the creation of a specific US-European Union cell that ensures effective cooperation between revenue authorities, customs, and law enforcement agencies. Again, at the end of this video, the complete content of the video is in order to get in the context of governance. It has no influence over any political affiliation or any political party, and the purpose of it is solely to get information from a governance standpoint. Thank you very much, and stay tuned. Have a good week.